painted in fire. Smoke curled upward from the torn earth, and the only sound breaking through the chaos was the haunting wail of an ambulance siren. Inside that trembling vehicle sat Sergeant Emma Hale, her hands steady on the wheel, her eyes scanning the battlefield like a hawk. She wasn't supposed to be there, not in the middle of an active combat zone. She was the one who drove in when everyone else was running out. Just a driver, that is what they called her. The woman who patched up bodies and drove through hell to deliver the wounded. But that night, something changed. That night, Emma Hale became something no one expected her to be. Like subscribe and click the bell icon for more stories. Her ambulance roared through the dirt road, bouncing over craters, headlights cutting through smoke. Behind her, two medics worked desperately to keep a young soldier alive. His blood soaked through the canvas stretcher. The radio crackled with chaos, reports of an ambush, a convoy hit, and enemy fighters closing in. "Stay with me," Emma whispered, her voice trembling but firm. "We're almost at base." Then came the sound, sharp, metallic, and final. A bullet pierced the side mirror, glass exploding beside her cheek. The convoy she was following had gone silent. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. Ahead, in the glow of her headlights, the road was gone, blown apart by a fresh crater, and somewhere in the darkness, the enemy was watching. She slammed the brakes, heart pounding. The wounded soldier behind her gasped for air. Emma grabbed the radio, calling for support, but only static answered. Dust and smoke swallowed the world outside. Her choices were shrinking by the second. Stay, and they'd all die. Move, and she'd be driving straight into an ambush. For a heartbeat, she closed her eyes. Then she shifted gears, slammed her foot on the pedal, and drove into the unknown. The tires screamed against the torn earth as the ambulance fought to stay upright. The world outside was a blur of shadow and flame. Emma could barely see a few feet ahead, but instinct kept her going. The base was 10 kilometers away, 10 kilometers of hostile territory. The radio still hissed in static. The young medic beside her was pale, clutching his bleeding shoulder, trying to keep pressure on the wounded soldier's chest. "He's fading, Emma," he shouted, voice cracking under fear. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her eyes were locked on the road, or what was left of it. The camera would follow the ambulance from above, a single beam of light carving through endless darkness. Then a flash, a rocket strike landed close enough to lift the vehicle off the ground. Metal screamed, the windshield cracked. Emma bit down on her tongue, pain and fear exploding through her skull. When the ambulance hit the ground again, it landed sideways, rolling into a ditch. Silence followed. For a long second, there was only the sound of rain hitting twisted metal. Emma opened her eyes. Blood trickled down her temple. She looked to the back. The medic wasn't moving. The soldier on the stretcher had gone limp. Her chest tightened, grief and fury colliding inside her. "No," she whispered, crawling through the wreckage, checking pulses, feeling for signs of life. The medic groaned faintly. The soldier was gone. Outside, boots crunched on gravel. Voices, foreign, sharp, deliberate, closed in. Enemy fighters. Emma's breath froze. She reached for her sidearm, a standard-issue pistol she hadn't fired since training. Her hands trembled as she cocked it, her back pressed to the side of the overturned ambulance. The voices came closer. A shadow crossed the broken window, and for the first time that night, Emma realized she wasn't driving anymore. She was being hunted. The rain fell harder now, washing the blood from her hands but not from her mind. Emma pressed herself against the cold metal, her pistol shaking slightly in her grasp. The flashlight beams swept across the wreck, slow, methodical, searching. She could hear them talking in low tones, their boots splashing in the mud. They were too close. She held her breath, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. The sound of one boot scuffed against the ambulance door. The metallic thud vibrated through her ribs. The camera would move in tight, a close-up on her eyes, pupils wide, breaths shallow. The enemy's hand reached for the handle. Emma's finger tightened on the trigger. Then, a burst of light. She fired. Once, twice. A cry followed, then chaos. She rolled out from under the vehicle, landing hard on the wet ground, firing again into the darkness. Muzzle flashes tore through the night. She didn't think. She reacted, every movement driven by raw survival. Her training as a driver hadn't prepared her for this. But months spent watching soldiers, listening, observing, learning, had taught her enough. She crawled toward the fallen fighter, grabbed his rifle, and ducked behind a boulder as bullets tore through the mud. She could feel the heat of every round slicing past. Her lungs burned. Her mind screamed at her to run. But somewhere deeper, something else spoke louder. Not yet. In that storm of chaos, Emma Hale transformed. She was no longer just the driver. She was the line between life and death. As the rain poured and the night grew darker, she took a deep breath, steadying her aim. She could see the muzzle flash of the next attacker, a single spark in the black void. She exhaled and pulled the trigger. The flash disappeared. Then silence. And in that silence, Emma realized she was the only one left standing. The rain had turned to mist now, curling around the wreckage like ghostly smoke. The smell of burned fuel and iron hung heavy in the air. Emma crouched beside the overturned ambulance, her hands still trembling from the recoil. The rifle felt strange in her grasp, too heavy, too real. She glanced at the bodies in the mud, enemy silhouettes sprawled in unnatural stillness. She should have felt relief, but all she felt was the hollow ache of what she'd lost. The medic, the soldier, both gone. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to push away the weight of guilt. The camera would pan slowly, circling her in the fog, the distant rumble of artillery echoing over the hills. In the distance, she saw light flickering, a burning vehicle, maybe friendly, maybe not. She needed to move. The base was still kilometers away, and dawn was hours out. She scavenged ammunition, a half-full canteen, and a torn map from one of the enemy's packs. Her training had been about logistics, not combat. But survival had a language of its own. Her boots sank into the wet earth as she started walking, each step deliberate, cautious. Every sound in the night felt amplified. The creak of branches, the hum of distant drones, the faint crackle of fire. She moved like a ghost between shadows, and as she walked, memories began to surface. The voice of her brother, a Navy SEAL lost in action 2 years earlier. "You don't quit when you're scared," he used to say. "You quit when you're done." Emma whispered those words to herself now. A mantra, a heartbeat. Then came another sound, low, mechanical, growing louder. She froze. Through the mist, headlights appeared, slowly approaching the crash site she'd just left. More enemy reinforcements. She crouched low, eyes wide. They were searching for survivors, or bodies. She could run, but she couldn't leave the fallen medic behind. She turned back, crawling through the mud toward the wreckage, toward the lifeless man who'd trusted her to bring him home. She reached him just as the enemy truck stopped nearby. Voices shouted. Flashlights swung. Emma pressed a finger to the medic's cold wrist, whispering, "I won't let them take you." She pulled a small grenade from the enemy's belt, the pin trembling between her fingers. She kissed her dog tags once, then tossed the grenade beneath the ambulance and ran. The explosion ripped the silence apart, lighting up the fog in orange and white. Emma hit the ground hard, ears ringing, debris raining down. And as she crawled away, dirt and smoke filling her lungs, she didn't look back. The camera would follow her silhouette, a single figure disappearing into the black forest, her breath ragged but alive. Somewhere beyond the trees, she could still hear the enemy shouting. They were coming. And this time, they knew she wasn't just a driver anymore. Hours passed like ghosts in the dark. The rain had stopped, leaving the world soaked and silent. Emma moved through the forest, guided by faint moonlight breaking through the canopy. Her uniform was torn, her hands cut and swollen, her heartbeat the only rhythm she could trust. She found a small clearing, sat beneath a fallen tree, and tried to steady her breathing. Every inhale tasted like rust and fear. The forest was alive. Crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, the faint whisper of wind through the leaves. It almost felt peaceful. Almost. But Emma knew better. Behind her, the glow of flashlights flickered faintly. The enemy was still searching. She had maybe an hour before they caught up. She opened the stolen map, tracing the path with trembling fingers. There was an outpost nearby, an old supply checkpoint abandoned months ago. If she could reach it, she might find a working radio, maybe even transport. But it meant cutting through enemy ground. Her eyes hardened. She had no choice. The camera would track her movement from low angles, the sound of branches snapping under her boots, the brush of leaves against her sleeve. Her face was streaked with mud, her eyes fierce. Somewhere between exhaustion and resolve, she had become something else. Not just a soldier, but a survivor. She reached the edge of the clearing and froze. Ahead, a faint shimmer of light. Campfire embers. Enemy scouts. 2 men resting near their gear, rifles laid beside them. She crouched low, studying them. Her pulse raced. Her brother's voice echoed again in her mind. If you're outnumbered, outthink them. She reached for a stone, tossed it deep into the brush. The men turned instantly, weapons drawn. In that split second of distraction, Emma moved. Silent, fast. The camera would catch her in slow motion, mud splattering as she lunged forward, striking one with the rifle butt, grabbing the other's weapon before he could scream. A brief struggle, a sharp motion, and then stillness. When the noise faded, only the fire crackled. Emma knelt there, panting, shaking. Her hands were stained again, with dirt, with blood, with everything she never wanted to become. She looked at the 2 men she'd just taken down and whispered, "I'm sorry." Then she gathered what she needed, water, ammo, a working compass, and moved on. The moon followed her through the trees like a silent witness, and as the camera pulled back, showing her tiny figure in an ocean of darkness, a new sound began to rise in the distance. Helicopters. Not enemy this time, but rescue, or so she hoped. The low rumble of rotors echoed through the valley. Emma's head snapped up, heart racing. She waved her arms, shouting, but the choppers didn't change direction. Through the canopy, she caught a glimpse of their insignia, not friendly. Enemy supply birds. Her hope vanished in an instant. She pressed herself against the ground as the helicopters swept over the treetops, their searchlights slicing through the branches. The camera would pull close on her eyes, reflecting the moving beams above. She held her breath as one light passed within inches of her position. A single movement could have ended her. When the sound finally faded, Emma exhaled and rolled onto her back, staring at the night sky. Her lips trembled. "I'm not dying here," she whispered. "Not like this." She rose, wiped her face with a muddy sleeve, and kept moving toward the outpost marked on her map. The forest began to thin. The air smelled of oil and rust. Broken barbed wire lined the path ahead. She was close. But something wasn't right. The silence was too deep, too heavy. She approached slowly, rifle raised. The outpost appeared before her, a small collection of crumbling bunkers, sandbags half buried in the ground. Inside, dust and memories, old ration boxes, rusted radios, empty shell casings. She stepped carefully, flashlight trembling in her hand. Then behind one door she heard it, a faint tapping. She froze, weapon ready. Another tap, then a voice. "American?" Her heart skipped. She whispered back, "Yes." The door creaked open, revealing a man in a tattered U.S. uniform, his face pale and desperate. "You're real," he breathed. He was wounded, leg bandaged with a torn shirt. I thought I was the last. Emma helped him sit, adrenaline shaking through her arms. We need to get out, she said. He nodded weakly. Together, they tried the old radio. Dead. Then a faint beep. A single light flickered. It was still functional, but only barely. Emma adjusted the frequency, praying. Static. Then, a voice. Echo team, identify yourself. Emma's eyes filled with tears. This is Sergeant Emma Hale, ambulance driver, Field Unit 17. We're alive. A pause. Then, copy that, Sergeant. Stay put. Extraction in 30 minutes. She laughed, the sound breaking into a sob. 30 minutes. That's all she needed to survive. But outside the bunker, unseen in the dark, a red flare shot up into the sky. A signal. The enemy had found them. The camera would fade to black on her face, dirt, blood, and rising fear as the sound of distant footsteps approached. The night split open with the sound of gunfire. Bullets struck the outer walls of the bunker, sending clouds of dust raining down from the ceiling. Emma ducked, dragging the wounded soldier behind an overturned table. "Stay low!" she shouted, her voice barely audible over the chaos. The radio still hissed faintly. Extraction in 30 minutes. But out there, 30 minutes could mean forever. The camera would circle her as she loaded her rifle, hands shaking but eyes sharp. Every shadow outside flickered with movement. The enemy was advancing, disciplined, calculated. She counted at least 6 distinct voices shouting commands in another language. Her heart pounded in rhythm with each distant explosion. She peeked through a crack in the wall, saw muzzle flashes in the distance. The outpost was surrounded. No escape, no backup. Her mind raced, assessing options. She remembered her brother's words again. Control what you can. Adapt to what you can't. She scanned the room. A few grenades, sandbags, fuel barrels, a broken window overlooking the narrow approach. She could turn it into a trap. Emma moved fast. She tore cloth from an old flag, soaked it in fuel, and tied it around one of the barrels. Then, using the last of her matches, she lit it, the fire flickering like defiance itself. "They want to fight," she whispered. "Let's give them one." The first wave came through the trees, rifles raised. The camera followed the moment in slow motion, boots splashing in mud, rain returning in cold sheets. Emma waited until they were close, then fired. The explosion lit up the valley, sending shock waves through the night. Screams echoed, smoke billowed, the ground itself seemed to shatter. But the fight wasn't over. Through the smoke, another group advanced. Emma fired until her rifle clicked empty. She grabbed the wounded man's pistol, pressing it into his hand. "If they breach, you aim and squeeze," she said. He nodded weakly. The radio crackled again. "Echo team inbound, 5 minutes out." Her heart surged. 5 minutes. That's all she had to hold. She moved toward the entrance, breathing hard, weapon raised. The rain made everything slick and gleaming. She crouched behind a sandbag wall, watching the tree line. Then, silence. No movement. No sound. Just the faint rustle of leaves. She frowned, straining to see. That's when she realized the silence was the attack. They were circling, flanking. She spun around just as a shadow dropped from the roof, knife glinting. The struggle was brutal, close, violent. The camera caught flashes of limbs, rain, and blood. Emma fought like something primal. No wasted motion, no hesitation. She slammed the enemy against the wall, using every ounce of strength left. The knife clattered to the floor. A single gunshot followed. When it ended, she stood there, chest heaving, rain pouring down through a hole in the roof. She looked at her trembling hands, covered in someone else's blood, and whispered, "I'm sorry." Then she turned toward the door. Helicopter blades thundered in the distance. Extraction was near, but she wasn't done yet. Outside, more movement, more shadows. The final wave was coming. The rain came down harder, turning the ground into a river of mud and ash. Emma stood at the doorway of the crumbling bunker, her rifle steady, her silhouette framed by firelight and storm. The enemy was closing in, at least 10 of them now, spreading through the valley like wolves. The camera pulled back, showing her small figure against the vast darkness, one woman standing alone between survival and destruction. Her voice broke the silence, low and fierce. "You'll have to go through me." They came fast, coordinated, ruthless. She dropped 2 with precise shots, ducked behind a wall as bullets tore through stone. Each moment was raw instinct. Reload, breathe, fire. Her body screamed in pain, but her mind had gone beyond it. Training, fear, exhaustion, all gone. There was only the mission now. Behind her, the wounded soldier called out, "They're surrounding us!" "I know," she said, reloading. "That's the point." She grabbed the last grenade, pulled the pin with her teeth, and rolled it toward the advancing group. The explosion lit up the trees, the shock wave knocking her to the ground. Ears ringing, vision blurred, she forced herself up again. The world was spinning, smoke choking the air. But she kept moving, firing, ducking, pushing forward through sheer will. The radio came to life again. "Echo team on approach. Flares if you can mark the LZ." Emma grabbed a flare gun from the supply box, limped outside, and fired into the storm. The red light burst above the forest, painting the sky in crimson. For a moment, everything stopped. The rain, the noise, even her heartbeat. Then, from above, came the sound she'd been waiting for, the heavy chop of friendly rotors cutting through the rain. She stumbled forward, waving, shouting into the chaos. But before she could reach them, a final burst of gunfire ripped through the night. One bullet struck her shoulder, spinning her around. She hit the ground hard, breath knocked from her lungs. The camera closed in on her face, eyes wide, lips trembling, rain mixing with blood. In the distance, the helicopter's floodlights swept across the field. Soldiers rappelled down, weapons drawn. Her vision blurred as boots thudded beside her, voices shouting her name. But even as they lifted her from the mud, Emma's eyes stayed fixed on the bunker, the place she refused to abandon, the battlefield that turned a medic into a warrior. Her last words before losing consciousness were a whisper. "Tell my brother, I didn't quit." When Emma opened her eyes, the world was quiet. The air smelled like antiseptic and steel. White light flooded the room, a military hospital tent. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she saw the IV line in her arm, the bandages across her shoulder, and the distant sound of helicopters still humming outside. A nurse approached, smiling softly. "You're safe now, Sergeant Hale. You made it." Emma turned her head slowly. Beside her bed sat the wounded soldier from the outpost, alive, smiling faintly. "You saved my life," he said. She managed a weak smile. "We saved each other." The camera would pan to the tent's entrance, where sunlight began to pour in, golden, warm, unreal after so much darkness. Outside, the field was quiet again, scattered with wreckage and smoke curling into the morning sky. Later, a commanding officer came in, handing her a folded flag, the one she'd used to light her trap. "You went above and beyond," he said. "You fought like one of the best." Emma looked down at the flag, her eyes filling with tears. "I was just doing my job," she whispered. But deep down, she knew something had changed forever. That night, as she sat outside the tent, the horizon glowed with a faint orange hue. The war still raged somewhere beyond those hills, but for now there was peace, a fragile, fleeting kind. She looked at her reflection in a puddle, the cuts, the bruises, the exhaustion, and barely recognized herself. "I didn't quit," she murmured again, her brother's words echoing through the silence. The camera would linger on her face, the faint smile forming as dawn light touched her eyes. Then, from behind, a voice. "They want to see you at command. They're recommending you for something special." She turned, eyebrows raised. Special? The soldier nodded. They said, you fought like a seal. Emma laughed quietly, shaking her head. He'd have liked that, she said. As the camera pulled back, the scene faded, her figure small against the morning sun, the battlefield slowly coming back to life behind